hours coming in from New York, and there was no direct flight. So I would go to London, from London, another flight. I'd arrive, I'd be so excited to go. I would literally go to Ireland to that, take me 2 hours to get there, and then 2 hours coming back. And then I would go 3 days later. So, because just to see other progress, just to see how things were going.
So now let's come to African Mosaic. And if you could tell us the story behind the birth of African Mosaic.
Interesting enough, African Mosaic came about because of ECF. So when I went back to New York and I started the foundation, I needed to raise money. And my whole thinking about fundraising was to make sure that I told positive stories. It was never going to be a negative story, because we already know it. It had to be a positive story with a strong message behind it. So with that in mind, obviously this is the industry I knew. It's the only industry I've known. So I thought, well, why don't we organize fashion shows? Why don't we organize fashion shows to raise funds? So that's how I first started with African Mosaic. And I was lucky enough in Paris, at the end of the Paris Fashion Week, the syndicate of Paris designers was like, very generous and supportive. And when I asked them if I can organize a Pan-African fashion show at the same platform of Paris Fashion Week, I believe it was one of the first that was done. So they agreed. They sponsored the whole thing. And I was on the phone trying to get every African designer I could find. And it was not easy, because I was literally starting off. So I was calling embassies. I was going to the Moroccan restaurant saying, do you know? And just trying to find any African I saw on the streets of Paris or London, or I would say, I need a designer. And we were lucky, we got 20 designers, and we organized the first fashion show. And I was working with a lot of my close friends at that time who are half French and English speaking. Just to kind of make it fair, I called African in English and Mosaic in French, because everybody had names of it should be like this. And I said, no, I'm going to call it African Mosaic. And it was a mosaic of different designers. So that's how I started. So it was supposed to have been one show in Paris, one show, and I was going to, raise enough money to build a school. That was my thinking. So I organized the show. It went really well. We went to New York, and of course, if Paris said yes, New York said yes. So we got the support in New York, and we organized the show. And we raised the first seed capital to build the first blocks of ECF school. And we also supported a school for the blind in Shashamene. We also supported Mother Teresa's first AIDS center in Sidiskilo. And the third organization was Abish Gobana. That's when I met her, and she was very inspirational to me at that time. So we supported existing organizations while we were building the school. And that's kind of how I started. And then when I when I was thinking of what I was going to do with my life after modeling, I thought, it's such a great concept, with African Mosaic. And I thought, instead of just doing charity events, okay, it's a good cause, it's a positive thing, but I'm like, how could I change this into something that's going to be sustainable, and that's going to be profit-making, and that's going to promote. So everything is not charity. And that's when I started really looking into developing this business. And so the idea came. So I got married, and we had Yared in New York, and then we moved to South Africa. And then I thought, let me think about how I can make African Mosaic a Pan-African fashion company. So that's how I started. Of course, a very long story. It's not easy. But my first venture was, I thought I'll use my marketing skills, and I thought I'll have a boutique and I'll have designers from different parts of Africa. So I did the retail route, but then it did okay, it did well on the outside, but it was a lot of challenge getting designers to deliver on time. Because, when you're living in Africa, getting products from other African countries is 10 times more expensive and complicated than ordering from China or ordering from India. So here I am based in South Africa thinking, I'll get my Ghanaian designer, I'll get my Madagascar designer, everything looked good, phone calls, and then you're thinking about shipping, you're thinking about costs. And so I had to kind of rethink again. And then I thought, okay, let me go back a few steps and try to understand what the challenges are. So I started designing very simple clothing like kaftans and things that I wear that I love.
Exactly.
And I just thought, I'm going to be a designer and I'm going to understand what the challenges are. And so I started doing my clothing, and it did really well. And I thought, okay, so I can actually, put my feet walk this path, and at the same time use my network, etc., to promote. But I also need to be able to speak with confidence, and to be able to speak with some experience as being an African designer living in Africa, And so now I wear multiple hats. So I design, I love designing, but obviously you need a lot of time to do it. I would love to give more time to design work, but now I'm still trying to put a lot of things in place, because what I'm doing now here in Ethiopia with Africa Mosaic is sort of bringing my years of experience that I have, obviously focusing on African fashion and trying to kind of figure out how I can create an environment that not only allows African designers to grow, but also giving opportunities to new designers coming into the industry, and then at the same time figuring out what the challenges are and then trying to find solutions to those challenges. So lots of things happening every day, but we are moving. It's tiny, tiny steps that I'm confident that we're moving forward. Sorry, I jumped around on
That's okay. How long has it been since you've started African Mosaic?
After Paris and all of that, it was still a cultural platform. So it wasn't registered or anything. It was just African Mosaic Show. And then we traveled to different countries. So we went to Washington, D.C. We went to, Atlanta, went to all these different big African events or festivals. They were like calling us to say, come and do a Pan-African fashion show. And all the money went to the school. So it was, my volunteers were pro bono and everything. But it wasn't until I moved to South Africa. So we lived 10 years in South Africa, and I've been in Ethiopia now for 10 years. So it's been almost 20 years, I could say that we really but obviously I came to Ethiopia, getting the land, building and everything. It took a while. So we've been operational maybe 7 years, 6, 7 years now. And, this is really like my dream. My plan was always, I need to come back to Ethiopia. I need to figure out how I'm going to create a fashion company in Ethiopia and make sure that every work I do is going to be promoting it. So we do manufacturing. We have a fashion magazine, AM Edit, which we launched. We do a fashion festival once a year. We have an incubator program for young designers. So we're doing a lot of things that I feel are important to really kind of grow this industry, because you can't only have one thing. If you have great designers but you have no platform, if you have great designers but they have no raw material, if you have, everything has to come together. Yeah. So at African Mosaic here in Legatafo, we do manufacturing, we have a leather department. We just recently launched our Shimana project, so we're doing traditional weaving. So that's a huge learning curve for me as well. It's something new for me, but I just felt this is something we need to also understand, because there are challenges also somehow linking design weavers with fashion designers. There's work to be done. Absolutely. And when you can experience it every day, you start understanding those challenges and finding solutions. So that's kind of where we are now.
That's very good, because you're giving a chance to the younger generation, because I don't think there's a lot of places like this. You either have to go to a certain design school to learn about design, but housing all of this together in one, I think it's a great spot. Would you say your designs are more contemporary?
So my design philosophy, if I can say so, it really starts with the fabrics, because I'm passionate about fabrics made in Africa. So it can be Ethiopian Shimana, it can be, Burkina Ikat, it can be Bogolan, it can be Kente. My starting point is the fabric. So my design, as a designer, I don't feel like I have to deconstruct the fabric to make something beautiful. I want to create something that's beautiful, that's flowing, but I don't want I want the body of the person wearing it to define the clothing. It doesn't have to be structured, if you see what I mean. And obviously I love African wraps, I love flowy clothing, obviously because I was exposed to this growing up. I should mention my mother was a designer, so obviously I grew up hearing that sewing machine all night long. So a passionate designer, but she obviously, because we traveled a lot, she didn't really have a career. My starting point is the fabric. I think my design philosophy is not really as a designer, because I'm not a technical person. I didn't go to design school, so I think out of the box. I don't think like this has to be like whatever. For me, I go with my emotion. I love fabrics. My favorite places to visit in Africa is markets. I love going to the markets and just smelling the fabrics, seeing them make it. And, that's what I want to bring into my clothing, and the storytelling behind the fabrics, And yes, not all fabrics are hand woven, not all fabrics are artisanal. There could be industrial fabrics, but somehow they tell the African story somewhere or another. Like when you're wearing it, they're like, okay, that's, I don't know where it is, but I know it's African. And that's really what I want to do as a designer. And I think we all have a responsibility as designers who want to promote made in Africa, made in Ethiopia clothing, that, it has to start from yourself. You can't be, thinking in a different direction, but you're designing it. It has to make sense. So I make what I love. I love African fabric. My designs are driven by the fabric, and sometimes it's heartbreaking because we have beautiful fabric. You don't want to cut it. It's like, so I'm always thinking about how can we make beautiful clothing without cutting it, and so it's contemporary. I like to say it's timeless. I want to say it's quite classic in a way, but it's also very affordable luxury. So, I'm not looking at making exclusive one-off dresses, where you spend million hours of doing it and only one person gets to enjoy it. I want to have more people enjoy African mosaic, and so we're affordable. But yeah, I would say contemporary for sure, but it's not fast fashion. I don't rush into, I want to do one beautiful collection a year. And just get it right. I don't try to pressure myself too much on deadlines. I know I should, but it's just have to go with the emotion and just hope that things come together, But generally, my design is quite casual, yeah.
Okay, so what do you think of Africa's, Ethiopia's creativity, production, manufacturing, textile industry? How can we grow as a continent and as a country in that way? Because we all have such amazing textile, right? But we don't have like a thriving industry in all of, I'm assuming in Africa.
Absolutely.
So how?
We don't, and I think, as you say, creativity is there. There's a lot of creativity. We see it with our incubator program. I see it in the markets. I see creativity is there. So there's no lack of creativity. There's no lack of raw material. We have cotton, we have leather, we have a huge workforce. So there's no lack, there's no shortage of that, I think what we lack is the opportunity. So my focus was sort of like, what are the challenges and what can I do? And what could my contribution be? So I narrowed in on designers because for me, a designer is the heartbeat of a collection, okay? So you think of Calvin Klein, he's a human being, he's still around. Ralph Lauren, Giorgio Armani, Valentino, these are people who started industries that are multi-billion-dollar industries driven by individuals. It wasn't easy day one, okay? Like it didn't happen overnight. But if you focus on the designer, the creative soul of a company, and you give the opportunities to that person, the opportunities from being, access to these raw materials. They might be there, but, we have great leather, but great leather is exported. How do local designers have access to great leather? We have great cotton, but how do you get the great cotton? It goes to Mercato, it goes here, and then when you get it, it's not the best cotton. And how do you export that? You have to be a big industry to buy big tons of, so you have to create these linkages and understand what the pain points are, understand what the challenges of the designers are, and then try to give them. That's what we've tried to do with our incubator program, saying, okay, let's do our best to create at least a platform. Once you finish, you can do a fashion show here. You can sell your clothes. You can be in our fashion magazine. We're going to try to create these opportunities because we know the talent is there, and we don't want you to be burnt out worrying about where am I going to sell? Who's going to buy it, So as a creative person, we want you to create, So that's where I think. I lived in South Africa. I've traveled to maybe 30 countries in Africa. and you ask the same question, you get the same answer. Where are the designers? Why don't we have a household name? And the flip side is we're all consumers. You know, Ethiopia is the second, third largest country in Africa. 120 million people, you know, and how many of us are actually wearing Ethiopian-made clothes, you know? And the thing is, it has to start from within as well. I mean, we can't expect from people from outside to come. We're here buying shirts that say Gucci. We're here buying shirts that may, you know, whether it's real or not, we feel confident wearing something that's foreign, you know? Yeah. And that's the mindset we need to change. Because when you buy a t-shirt, and everybody has a t-shirt. If you buy a t-shirt and that t-shirt has Gucci on it, it immediately says what you're trying to promote. Right. If you have a t-shirt that's made in Ethiopia, or if you have a shoe or whatever. So so we all have to make that decision every day when we're wearing clothing. Because building an industry is not going to be government only. It's not going to be private sector. It's not going to be European, American buyers. It's also us who are out there buying clothes, buying socks, there are products that are actually made that are really good, you know?
Absolutely.
And so, hence my t-shirt. So,
exactly, that's what I was going to say. We're all wearing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I know your style, and you definitely promote local designers.
Absolutely.
And it has to start. It doesn't have to be everything you own. If it's 10%, 15% of your wardrobe, you will see a shift in the industry. Because we have the numbers here. And so, when you see the Brazilian story, when you see the Japanese story, they were not immediately accepted into the Western world, but locally they were supported by local buyers. They were and then they built enough of an industry where they felt confident to start competing internationally,
So how do you make the local buyers, I'm not talking about, the ones that spend a lot of money, because I would think that when we go local, it has to be a little bit lower, because they would buy more, as opposed to just one a year or two a year, if you know what I mean. So how do you put Ethiopian locally made clothing more accessible? Let's just say the younger generation.
But it's there. I mean,
no, it is, but it's a wearable. How wearable are our clothes?
I don't know. When was the last time you and Shuro Meda and walked around Shuro?
No, I know.
Lots of wearable stuff. My local lots of wearable stuff.
But for the younger generation.
Absolutely. I mean, of course, you have to be a bit creative, but you have tailors in Ethiopia, which is great. Tailored clothes in the West is like a luxury. Here, you can go and buy woven things, and you can go to a tailor and say, make this outfit for me.
Yes.
At every price point. Of course, when you talk about high fashion and when you talk about, designer clothes per se, sometimes they're a bit high priced. But, you don't have to. There are designers making very wearable, casual clothing. And it's available. It's more available now than it was before.
Actually been.
What I feel we should push is the innovation, because sometimes it's like, oh, so and so is making that, it's so good, and then all of a sudden everybody's making that. But it is available. If you look for it, you can find it. And you know what? It might not be perfect the first round, but it's fine. It's like, you have to be a little bit forgiving in the sense. It's not going to be perfection, but you will buy something that has a story, that has a meaning, and you're putting your money into an economy that you believe in, And then hopefully that person will do better, And then that's how they grow. But there are designers doing incredible work now. Really, I mean,
I have to agree.
We have a lot of options. Really, a lot of options.
So my last question, I think, should be that you could tell us a little bit more about the Ethiopian fashion design incubator that you're doing. You've touched on it quite a few, but if we could know what it is, when you started, and how important it is to our industry.
Thank you. I mean, it's something that's very important for me. When I came back to Ethiopia, like I said, I experienced so much of this fashion world, and I wanted to make sure I was going to do something relevant. And, of course, I organized fashion shows, which I love doing. I mean, I was a showgirl. I did runway like for, 9 years out of 10 in 7 markets. I love fashion shows. I love bringing clothes to life, because when you're making something on a table, when you're hanging, it's not the same. When you bring it to life with music, and I love all of that. But I just felt for designers, it was not enough, just to do a fashion show and go. I had to make sure that they had enough preparation before that fashion show, so that when they produce their collection, then they're already ready for the market. So this incubator program was something I launched 5 years ago, and we take 10 designers a year. So we've had close to 48 who dropped out who've gone through our program. And I can confidently say that it has really impacted these designers, and a lot of the designers who are working now have gone through this program. And we've divided into 3. So the first part is upskilling. So from wherever they are, because a lot of the design schools, they teach them broad range of designing, but you want to specialize in swimming wear and in bridal and whatever. So we focus on what they really want to do, and we upskill them with whether it's pattern, whether it's concept development and such. And then we have the second part, which is the building your own collection. So how do you get inspiration? How do you develop a collection? And that needs time, and so it's each one is 4 months, and they only come for 5 days a month. So they just come here, or if it's a field thing, or they go and visit museums, and then the last part is the business of fashion, which is a very important part, because as creatives, we're not always the best business people. So this is really about, think about, do you want to open your boutique in Bole, or do you want to save your money and do a collection at a pop-up? Do you just kind of putting together a business plan and thinking about your business. And so we invite guests to come and do presentations and everything on, production, on finance and marketing, etc. So yeah, so the goal is to incubate. It's a free program, and when I say free, it's not to say I want to run it as a charity, no. But if you want to find the best designer, I don't want money to be the issue that's going to stop them, if you see what I mean. So if I charge this program, because obviously, we're always struggling to find sponsors and support, but if you say you have to pay, then am I really going to find that designer? Because I want to find a Calvin Klein. I want to find those designers that are going to be the next generation designers who are going to take this to a whole different level. And to be able to make it a fair, open opportunity, we don't charge them. But I don't like the word free, but you understand.
I agree.
We don't want it to be free, but we want it. We're very strict about attendance. We're very strict about delivering, but I don't want it to become an issue where someone who really has the talent cannot afford it for some reason. So yeah, so that's the incubator program. So
how many times a year?
So it's one program that runs for 12 months.
When do you start?
So around now. So. Okay. Yeah, our agenda is kind of, October, November is, really when we start selecting the designers. But by December, January, we get into the program. And then by next October, they finish the program. And then we showcase it at our festival. And then we do a big awards thing, and the winner, gets a sewing machine, etc.
Everything you've said has been like a good point, for designers to actually see. But if there's anything else that you think that I've left or you've left behind, not saying, this would be the perfect time.
Wow, okay. So a couple of things. Number one is, I think, enjoy the process, have fun while you're doing it. I mean, it's not easy if you want to get into fashion. I think what's really important for me is, because I'm in this for the long run, I know it's not going to happen overnight, that it's really important to enjoy the process. Absolutely. If you see what I mean. Absolutely. You have to enjoy the process. You have to understand there's going to be challenges. I'm not saying we have easy days. We have a lot of difficult days, but I want to have fun doing it. I want to grow as a person. I'm learning every day, and when it happens, it will happen when it's supposed to happen, But in the meantime, I think it's really important to think long term, to think that you give what you can, but at the same time, you should be able to enjoy it somewhere, or else you can get burnt out or anything.
Absolutely.
So enjoy the process. Other than that, fashion industry is a fantastic industry to be in. Huge opportunities nowadays everywhere. We're talking about integration. We're talking about so many cross-cultural things that we're just beginning now to see come to fruition. So I think, the next decade is going to be exciting time for our industry, but just remember it's 90% hard work and 10% glamour. It's just 10% we get to be on stage, The rest of the time we're running around trying to make things work. So yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you again for having us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks again. This is your Pan-African show called Africa with your host Qetselaworq Seifu. Please tune in on Saturdays from 4 to 5 on African Renaissance Satellite Television. Thank you again.